They say that when someone is about to die, the world becomes very quiet. Not silent, just distant. Claire Thompson remembers the cold first. Not the kind that comes from winter air, but the kind that seeps upward from the ground, through fabric, through skin, into bone. She was lying on her back, on a gravel road beside an old cemetery, with a man's hands around her throat, and the sky above her looked impossibly empty. No stars, no moon, just darkness. She tried to scream. Nothing came out. The man above her was crying, but his eyes were not on her. They were fixed on something behind her, something he could see, something she could not. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Not to her. Never to her. Then the fog rolled in, not drifting, not slowly. It moved like it had been waiting. The air thickened, the world narrowed, and that was when Claire heard it. A man's voice, low, steady, unnaturally calm. It spoke her name, not shouted, not pleaded, spoken like a certainty. Claire. The hands on her throat loosened. The man above her dropped to his knees, begging something that had no shape. And the voice spoke again. Run. What Claire didn't know then, what she would only understand later, was that this was not the first time that voice had been heard on that road. And it would not be the last. Because some places remember fear, some roads remember blood, and some spirits never leave the place where the boundary was crossed. Tonight, you're going to hear what really happened in that fog, why the cemetery is a line that should never be crossed, who Jacob Miller was, and what he's still doing there, and why. If you ever hear your name spoken from the darkness, you must never answer. Claire Thompson left Chicago on a gray morning when the city felt heavier than usual. The train platform smelled of rain, metal, and old coffee. People rushed past her, eyes fixed on phones, minds already somewhere else. No one noticed the way Claire hesitated before stepping onto the train, as if she were leaving something behind, or perhaps being called back. Iowa wasn't part of her plan. It was a retreat, a pause, a quiet place to breathe after months of exhaustion that sleep could not fix. Grandma Helen's letter had been short. The house is empty. The town is quiet. You can stay as long as you need. Claire remembered Iowa as endless fields, slow afternoons, and a silence that once felt comforting. She didn't remember it feeling watchful. When she arrived, the town looked smaller than memory. A single main street, a diner with flickering neon, a gas station that closed before midnight. Grandma Helen's house stood slightly apart from the others, near the edge of farmland that stretched toward the horizon. White paint chipped by time. A porch that creaked even under careful footsteps. Grandma Helen hugged her tightly. "You're too thin," she said. Then, softer. "Too tired." Inside, the house smelled of old wood, dried lavender, and something faintly metallic. The walls were lined with framed photographs, faces from different decades staring out with expressions frozen in time. Claire noticed one thing immediately. No photos faced the back windows. At night, her room felt colder than the rest of the house. The wind slid through the fields, whispering against the siding. Not howling, not roaring, but murmuring. as if carrying words just beyond understanding. The first night, Claire woke suddenly at 2:17 a.m. No dream, no sound, just a feeling, like someone had been standing at the foot of her bed and had just stepped away. She told herself it was jet lag, city nerves adjusting to rural quiet. But the feeling returned, night after night. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps on the porch, slow, deliberate, stopping just before the door. Grandma Helen never mentioned it. One evening, while unpacking old boxes in the guest room, Claire found her phone buzzing. Megan Walker. The name felt unreal, like a ghost from another life. High school reunion. This Friday, at my place. Claire stared at the screen for a long time. She hadn't spoken to most of them in years. People drifted. Lives split apart. Yet, something tightened in her chest. A pull she didn't understand. That night, she asked Grandma Helen about the reunion. Grandma Helen paused while stirring her tea. Megan's house is near the old cemetery, she said casually. Then added, be careful driving back at night. Claire smiled. I'll be fine. Grandma Helen didn't smile back. Some roads look the same in daylight, she said quietly, and very different after dark. The day of the reunion arrived under a low, heavy sky. Clouds pressed down like a lid. The air felt charged, waiting. Claire almost didn't go. But loneliness has a way of disguising itself as nostalgia. Megan Walker's farmhouse sat beyond town limits, surrounded by open land and narrow gravel roads. As Claire pulled in, she was surprised by the number of cars. Too many. The house glowed warmly from the outside. Laughter spilled through open windows. Music played, but slightly distorted, like the speakers were old or tired. Inside, familiar faces greeted her with exaggerated excitement. Haven't changed at all. Remember sophomore year? We should do this more often. But beneath the smiles, Claire sensed tension. Eyes darted. Conversations stopped abruptly when she entered a room. And then, she felt it. Someone watching her. Across the room stood Lucas Reed. Older, broader shoulders. A faint scar near his eyebrow she didn't remember. But his eyes. They didn't blink when she looked back. There was no smile, no greeting, just watching. Claire felt suddenly exposed, like the air had thinned around her. She tried to focus on conversations, on drinks, on harmless laughter, but everywhere she moved, Lucas's gaze followed. It wasn't desire. It was something heavier, something unfinished. By the time the clock neared 10, Claire's skin prickled with unease. The roads back to Grandma Helen's house were dark, but staying felt worse. She grabbed her coat. As she stepped outside, cool air rushed over her skin, bringing relief and dread. Leaving already? Lucas stood behind her. I don't like driving the farm roads late, she said. I'll take you to the state highway, he replied. Those gravel roads are tricky at night. His tone was calm, reasonable. Claire hesitated. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. She nodded. The night swallowed them as they walked to the car, and far beyond the house, past the fields, past the trees, the cemetery waited. The moment Claire sat inside Lucas Reed's car, she knew she had made a mistake. It wasn't something obvious. Not a smell. Not a sound. It was the way the door closed. Too final. The interior light flicked off, and the darkness pressed in from all sides. The dashboard glowed faintly, casting pale shadows across Lucas's face. His hands rested on the steering wheel, still, almost tense. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," Claire replied quickly. Too quickly. The engine started. Gravel crunched beneath the tires as the car pulled away from Megan Walker's house. Laughter and music faded behind them, swallowed by the open land and the dark. At first, the road was familiar. A narrow strip of asphalt cutting through farmland. Cornfields on both sides, tall and unmoving, like walls. Lucas drove slowly. Too slowly. The radio was off. Only the sound of tires against road. And Claire's own breathing. Louder than it should have been. "You came back from Chicago," Lucas said after a while. "Just for a bit." "How long?" "I don't know." He nodded, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "I always wondered if you'd come back," he said. Then, after a pause, "if you'd remember this place." Claire glanced at him. "Why wouldn't I?" Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. "Some people don't like remembering." The road narrowed as they turned off the main stretch. Claire noticed it immediately. "This isn't the highway," she said. "It's a shortcut," Lucas replied. "Faster than looping around." The asphalt gave way to gravel. The sound changed, sharper, rougher, echoing in the silence. Claire's fingers curled against her coat. The headlights cut through darkness that felt thicker here, heavier. Trees loomed closer to the road, their branches arching overhead like bent arms. Then she saw it. The cemetery fence. Old iron bars, rusted and crooked, running parallel to the road for a long stretch. Headstones stood beyond it, uneven and tilted, some half swallowed by grass. Claire swallowed. "I didn't know this road went past the cemetery," she said. Lucas smiled faintly. "Most people don't." The temperature inside the car dropped. Claire felt it on her skin, a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the weather. As they drove alongside the cemetery, the headlights swept across the graves. Names flashed briefly, then vanished. Claire had the strangest sensation that the stones weren't empty, that something behind them was watching her pass. Lucas slowed the car even more. "You remember high school?" he asked. "Of course." He laughed quietly. "I don't think I ever really left it." Claire turned toward him. "What do you mean?" Lucas didn't answer right away. The car continued forward, gravel crunching, the cemetery stretching endlessly beside them. "I used to think," he said slowly, "that if I waited long enough, things would come back to me." Claire's heartbeat quickened. "Lucas, maybe you should drop me at the highway now." He ignored her. "I watched you back then," he continued. "Every day." Claire's stomach tightened. That's a strange thing to say." "I never said anything," he said. "I thought there'd be time." The car slowed to a crawl. The cemetery fence ended abruptly, giving way to open ground and a cluster of older graves farther back, barely visible through the fog that had begun to creep low across the field. Lucas finally turned to look at her. "If I'd been braver, we'd be married by now." The words landed heavily between them. Before Claire could respond, the car stopped. Suddenly, Her seatbelt bit into her shoulder as the momentum snapped forward. The headlights illuminated nothing but fog and tall grass ahead. "Lucas," she said, her voice rising. He reached for the door. "What are you doing?" she asked. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Claire barely had time to react before Lucas grabbed her arm and pulled. She screamed as she stumbled out of the car, losing her footing on the loose gravel. She fell hard, pain exploding through her hip as the breath was knocked from her lungs. Lucas was on her instantly. His hand clamped over her mouth. The smell of dirt, cold earth, old leaves filled her senses. "Stop!" she tried to scream, but the sound died in her throat. His fingers tightened around her neck. The sky above was a flat, empty black. The cemetery loomed just a few yards away. Claire clawed at his hands, her vision blurring as panic surged. Her body screamed at her to breathe, but couldn't. "I waited," Lucas whispered, his voice shaking. "I waited so long." The ground beneath her was freezing, seeping through her clothes, anchoring her to the earth. Her thoughts fractured. This can't be happening. This can't be where it ends. The fog thickened around them, rolling in low and heavy, swallowing the road, the car, the world beyond. Then, Lucas stiffened. His grip faltered. His eyes shifted, not to her, but past her. "No," he whispered. The pressure on her throat loosened as his expression changed from rage to terror. Claire gasped, dragging in air that burned her lungs. Lucas released her completely and staggered backward. He fell to his knees in the dirt. "I didn't mean to," he said frantically. "I didn't mean to. Please." He bowed his head. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry." Claire lay frozen on the ground, too afraid to move. Her heart hammered in her ears. She followed his gaze. There was nothing there, only fog, thick, swirling, unnatural. And yet, Claire felt it. A presence. Something standing between her and Lucas. Something unseen, but undeniable. Then she heard it. A voice. Low, male, calm. Claire. It came from behind her. From inside the fog. Her entire body went cold. The voice spoke again. "Run." The word run did not echo. It did not shout. It settled into Claire's bones like a command that had been waiting for her all her life. For a fraction of a second, she couldn't move. Her body lay heavy against the frozen ground, lungs burning, mind fractured between terror and disbelief. The fog shifted. Not drifting. Not flowing. It moved with intention. Lucas was still on his knees, rocking slightly, his hands clenched in the dirt as if trying to anchor himself to the earth. "I didn't mean to," he muttered again. "I didn't mean to." The voice spoke once more. "Now." Claire rolled onto her side and pushed herself up. Her legs screamed in protest, but adrenaline drowned the pain. She stumbled forward, away from Lucas, away from the car, away from the place where she had almost stopped existing. The fog closed around her instantly. It wasn't empty. It pressed against her skin, damp and cold, clinging to her hair, her clothes, her breath. Visibility dropped to barely an arm's length. The world beyond the fog ceased to exist. She ran blindly. Gravel cut into her palms when she tripped. Thorns tore at her sleeves. Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps that echoed too loudly in the silence. Then, She heard footsteps, not behind her, beside her, matching her pace. Claire's heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. "Keep going," the voice said. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't urgent. It was steady, grounded. She ran faster. The fog thickened, curling like smoke around her legs. Shapes appeared and vanished at the edges of her vision. Tree trunks, broken fence posts, gravestones standing like crooked teeth. She realized with horror that she had crossed into the cemetery itself. The air here felt different, heavier, older. Each step felt like trespassing. Her foot caught on something hard. She fell forward, scraping her hands against stone. When she looked down, her blood smeared across a headstone. The name was barely readable, but she didn't need to read it. A pressure built behind her eyes, sudden and overwhelming. Images flashed through her mind. A young man laughing in sunlight, hands stained with oil and dirt. The roar of machinery. A scream cut short. Claire sobbed, shaking. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't do this." A presence settled behind her. Not touching, not threatening, protective. "You're not alone," the voice said. She felt it then. Not fear, but grief. Deep, enduring, like the land itself was mourning. "Get up," the voice urged. She forced herself to her feet and staggered onward. The fog began to thin, just slightly. A faint glow appeared ahead, pale and distant. "Follow the light," the voice said. Claire did. With every step, her limbs grew heavier, as if the earth itself tried to pull her back. She could hear something now, far behind her. A scream. Lucas's voice, warped, panicked. "Stop," he yelled. "Don't leave me." Claire didn't turn around. She couldn't. The light grew brighter. Then suddenly, she burst out of the fog. The state highway lay before her, empty and silent, stretching endlessly in both directions. Headlights approached in the distance, faint but real. Claire collapsed onto the cold asphalt, sobbing, gasping for air. The fog halted at the edge of the road. It did not cross. Claire looked back. The fog swirled, then slowly withdrew, retreating toward the cemetery as if obeying an unspoken boundary. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing within it. A man, young, his outline faint but solid. He tipped his head slightly, as if acknowledging her. Then he was gone. A passing car slowed. A driver shouted something, words Claire didn't register. She was helped into the warmth of the vehicle, wrapped in a blanket, asked questions she couldn't answer. She told them she had fallen, that she was disoriented. She did not mention Lucas. She did not mention the voice. Some things sound like madness when spoken aloud. Grandma Helen didn't ask many questions when Claire returned home. She took one look at Claire's shaking hands, the bruises forming along her neck, the way her eyes refused to meet the darkness beyond the windows. And she nodded. "I'll make tea," she said simply. That night, Claire didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the fog, heard the voice, and felt the ground beneath her, cold, unyielding. Just before dawn, she heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, measured. They stopped at the door. Claire held her breath. Then, they faded. In the morning, Grandma Helen insisted they go somewhere. "There's someone you need to see," she said. Claire didn't ask who. She already knew. Mrs. Margaret Collins lived at the far end of town, where the road narrowed and the fields gave way to a cluster of old trees that never seemed to lose their leaves. Her house was smaller than Claire expected. One story, gray siding, curtains always drawn, even during the day. The place looked less like a home and more like a waiting room. Grandma Helen parked the car and turned off the engine. "Let me do the talking," she said quietly, then added, "Listen carefully." Claire nodded. The front door opened before they knocked. Mrs. Collins stood there, thin and upright, her hair pulled back tightly as if order itself were a defense. Her eyes moved to Claire immediately. She studied her face, her throat, her hands. "You crossed the cemetery line," she said. It wasn't a question. Claire felt her mouth go dry. Mrs. Collins stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the air smelled of dried herbs and old books. Shelves lined the walls, filled with journals, newspaper clippings, and objects Claire couldn't name. Small carved figures, stones wrapped in twine, a cracked pocket watch that ticked despite having no visible hands. Mrs. Collins sat across from Claire at a small wooden table. "You don't have to tell me everything," she said. "But tell me this." She leaned forward. "When he touched you, did the cold come first, or the fear?" Claire closed her eyes. "The cold," she whispered. Mrs. Collins nodded slowly. "That means you weren't alone." Grandma Helen folded her hands. "I thought so." Mrs. Collins stood and crossed the room, pulling a folder from a cabinet. She placed it on the table and opened it. Inside was an old photograph. A young man stood beside a tractor, smiling awkwardly at the camera. He couldn't have been more than 20. "Jacob Miller," Mrs. Collins said. Claire felt a strange pressure in her chest the moment she saw the face. "He died 17 years ago," Mrs. Collins continued. "Right near the cemetery. Tractor accident." She tapped the photograph. "But accidents don't leave marks like that." Claire looked closer. Jacob's eyes in the photograph seemed tired, watchful. "He stayed," Mrs. Collins said. "Not because he wanted to, but because he had to." Claire swallowed. "He was the voice," she said. "The one who told me to run." "Yes." Mrs. Collins sat again. "Jacob Miller doesn't protect everyone," she said carefully. "He protects those who don't belong to what's been feeding out there." Claire's skin prickled. "Feeding?" she asked. Mrs. Collins's gaze darkened. "Some places attract grief," she said, "and some people learn how to use it." She flipped to another page in the folder. This one held a newspaper clipping. "Local man arrested for illegal seance gatherings. Charges dropped." The photo beneath the headline showed a younger Lucas Reed. Claire's breath caught. "He wasn't alone," Mrs. Collins said. "He never was." Grandma Helen sighed. "I warned his mother." Mrs. Collins nodded. "You did." She turned back to Claire. "Lucas believed the land owed him something," she said. "He believed the dead could give it back." Claire's thoughts raced. "The way he looked at me," she said slowly. "It wasn't just obsession." "No," Mrs. Collins agreed. "It was entitlement." The room felt colder. "He thought if he offered enough," Mrs. Collins continued. Something would help him take what he wanted. Claire felt sick. What did he offer? She asked. Mrs. Collins hesitated. Attention, she said finally. Time. Curiosity. She leaned back. And once something answers, it doesn't stop asking. Claire thought of Lucas's terror, the way he had dropped to his knees. He wasn't apologizing to me, Claire said. Mrs. Collins shook her head. No, she said softly. He was apologizing to what followed him. Silence settled over the room. Claire stared at Jacob Miller's photograph again. Why did he help me? She asked. Mrs. Collins closed the folder. Because you didn't cross the line willingly, she said. And because Jacob knows what it's like to be trapped between machinery and silence, with no one coming. Claire shuddered. The cemetery is a boundary, Mrs. Collins said. Some things can't cross it. Others refuse to leave it. Grandma Helen stood. She's safe now. Mrs. Collins considered this. For now, she said, as long as she doesn't answer when the land calls her name. Claire's blood ran cold. It calls people? She asked. Mrs. Collins met her eyes. Only the ones it recognizes. When they left, the sky had darkened again, clouds rolling low and heavy. In the car, Claire finally spoke. Grandma, why didn't you tell me about any of this? Grandma Helen kept her eyes on the road. Because some stories don't protect you, she said. They prepare you to listen. That night, Claire dreamed of fog rolling through fields, of a young man standing at the edge of a grave, holding his hands out, not to her, but toward the darkness beyond. And far away, a voice screamed in anger, denied. The weeks that followed felt unreal. Claire stayed inside Grandma Helen's house more than she meant to. Days passed quietly, marked by weak sunlight and long shadows stretching across the fields. Life in the town returned to its familiar rhythm, but Claire didn't. At night, sleep came in fragments. She dreamed of gravel crunching under tires, of fog rolling low across open ground, of a voice that never raised itself, yet always carried authority. Sometimes she woke convinced someone stood just beyond the bedroom door, not threatening, not waiting, guarding. She never told Grandma Helen. Grandma Helen never asked. The bruises on Claire's neck faded slowly, leaving behind a tenderness she felt every time she swallowed. People in town noticed her quietness, her reluctance to linger after sunset. They did not ask questions. In small towns, silence is a courtesy. Claire avoided the cemetery road. She avoided Megan Walker's house. She avoided anything that reminded her of that night. But Iowa has a way of bringing things back. One afternoon, at the diner, she overheard Lucas Reed's name spoken in hushed tones. He hasn't been right, someone whispered, ever since the reunion. Claire's spoon clinked softly against her cup. He barely sleeps, another voice added. Drives all night, just circles the roads. A chill crept up her spine. That evening, as dusk settled in, Claire stood at the kitchen window watching the fields darken. The sky pressed low again, heavy with clouds that promised snow. She felt it then. A pull. Subtle. Persistent. Like the land itself was clearing its throat. Don't answer, Grandma Helen said suddenly, from behind her. Claire startled. What? Grandma Helen set a kettle on the stove. Some people mistake attention for invitation, she said. And some places don't forgive the confusion. Claire stepped away from the window. That night, the fog returned. It rolled in quietly, pooling along the ground, seeping through the fields like breath exhaled by something enormous. The porch light cast a weak halo that barely touched it. Claire stood in the doorway, heart pounding. She thought she saw movement beyond the light. Not approaching, not retreating, watching. She shut the door and locked it. Miles away, Lucas Reed was driving. He hadn't stopped driving for hours. The highway blurred beneath his headlights as snow began to fall, thin at first, then thicker. His hands trembled on the steering wheel. His eyes darted constantly to the rearview mirror. Something sat there sometimes. Not always, but often enough. He talked to it. "I'm almost done," he whispered. "I just need more time." The radio flickered on without his touch, static hissing, voices bleeding through that didn't belong to any station. He slammed his hand against it. Stop. The road signs grew unfamiliar. He didn't recognize where he was anymore. The fog found him there too. It slipped across the asphalt, swallowing the lines, erasing direction. Lucas slowed, panic rising as the world narrowed to headlight beams and shifting gray. He saw the cemetery fence in the distance. He screamed. Back in Grandma Helen's house, Claire woke suddenly, gasping. Her heart raced. She didn't know why, only that something had shifted. The next morning, Mrs. Margaret Collins called. "You felt it," she said without greeting. "Yes," Claire replied. Mrs. Collins sighed. "It's finishing what it started." "Lucas?" Claire asked. "Yes." Claire hesitated. "Will he come here?" "No," Mrs. Collins said. "He knows better now." Claire closed her eyes. "Then why do I still feel afraid?" "Because protection doesn't mean peace," Mrs. Collins replied. "It means balance." That afternoon, snow began to fall in earnest. The town slowed to a hush beneath the white blanket. Roads iced over. Visibility dropped. Claire stayed inside, wrapped in blankets, listening to the wind move through the trees like distant breathing. Just before nightfall, she heard it. A car engine. Passing. Too fast. The sound faded, then vanished. Later, the sirens came. They cut through the quiet like a blade. Grandma Helen turned off the radio when the report came in. A single car accident. Highway. Winter conditions. Lucas Reed. Claire didn't cry. She sat very still. That night, the fog did not come. The land felt quieter, as if something had finally stopped struggling. In her dreams, Claire stood at the edge of the cemetery again. The fog parted, revealing the young man from the photograph, Jacob Miller. He didn't speak. He simply nodded. And behind him, far back among the stones, something darker receded. Angry, unfinished, denied. They buried Lucas Reed on a morning when the sky hung low and colorless. Snow covered the ground in uneven patches, disturbed only by footprints and tire tracks that led away again, as if even the land did not want him to stay long. Claire did not attend the funeral. She stood at Grandma Helen's kitchen window instead, watching the wind bend the trees toward the cemetery in the distance. She did not feel relief, only quiet. The kind that comes after something has stopped screaming. The town spoke of the accident in careful terms. Black ice, loss of control, wrong speed for the weather. But some details were left out. Lucas had been driving the opposite direction of his home. His car had veered suddenly, violently, as if avoiding something in the road. There were no skid marks, no animal remains. Just a stretch of highway where the snow melted faster than it should have. Mrs. Margaret Collins visited 2 days later. She stood in the doorway for a long moment before stepping inside. "It's done," she said. Claire nodded. "Is it?" she asked quietly. Mrs. Collins removed her gloves slowly. "Nothing like that ever truly ends," she replied. "It only learns where it cannot go." They sat in silence, listening to the house settle around them. The ticking clock on the wall sounded too loud. Claire finally spoke. "Jacob Miller," she said. "What happens to him now?" Mrs. Collins folded her hands. "He stays," she said, "until the land no longer needs remembering." Claire frowned. "Remembering what?" Mrs. Collins met her eyes. "That some boundaries were paid for with lives." That night, Claire walked alone to the edge of Grandma Helen's property. Snow crunched beneath her boots, each step loud in the quiet. She stopped where the fence ended and the fields began. The fog was thin tonight, barely present, but it was there. "Thank you," Claire said softly, unsure who or what might hear her. The air shifted. A shape formed several yards away. Jacob stood at the edge of the field, clearer than before. His face held no fear, only exhaustion and resolve. "You're safe," he said. "Will you ever leave?" Claire asked. Jacob looked past her, toward the cemetery. "When the roads forget," he replied. The fog thinned further, pulling back like a tide. Jacob's form faded with it. Spring came slowly that year. The snow melted. The roads softened. The town returned to its routines. Claire stayed in Iowa longer than she planned. She learned the rhythms of quiet again, but she never forgot how fragile it was. Some nights, she still woke at 2:17 a.m. But now, the feeling had changed. It no longer felt like someone had been standing at the foot of her bed. It felt like someone had just finished a patrol. On the anniversary of the reunion, Claire drove to the state highway. She parked near the stretch where Lucas had crashed. A small cross stood there now, already weathered. She didn't approach it. Instead, she stood at the edge of the road, listening. The wind moved through the grass. The fog did not come. But for a moment, just a moment, Claire heard footsteps pacing beside the road. Steady, measured, protective. She smiled faintly. Some roads remember what happened on them. Some places remember who was saved. And some debts are not collected in anger, but in balance. If you ever find yourself driving alone through Iowa at night, and the fog begins to gather, listen carefully. If you hear your name spoken calmly, clearly, do not answer. Just run.